Well, Chairman Webb, first of all, thank you very much for holding this hearing and for your interest in this subject. Senator Graham, thank you for your continued interest in fighting for our soldiers and in so many different ways. I'm honored to be before your committee, and I bring to you an attention of a serious issue concerning the health of our combat troops and how the military is dealing with the stress of combat and repeated deployments. There's some very disturbing statistics that the chairman mentioned in his opening statement, but let me try to just fill in a few more of the details. In 2009, there were 160 active duty Army suicides. That's a 15% increase from the previous year. We have an alarming use in the increase of antidepressants. In 2005, there were a little over 4,000 combat troops using antidepressants. That's about 1%. By 2007, it grew to over 19,000, or 5% of our troops on antidepressants. That's a huge increase in the use of antidepressants, and that number remained pretty constant for 2008. We do know that there is information that's been made available to us. I can cite just one source. The Army's 5th Health Advisory Team tells us that the use of antidepressants and the medication for sleeping pills, that number in our combat troops in Iraq is 12%, and our combat troops in Afghanistan is 17%, and Chairman, as you said, 1 out of every 6. So we know that there's a huge number of those that are using these types of medications. There's a real question as to whether they're receiving the proper medical supervision, the proper monitoring. This is particularly true during the first 6 weeks when medications are taken and when your body adjusts to the medicines that you're taking so that the adverse reactions are less likely. In combat, the antidepressant that's most likely used is SSRIs. Since 2004, the FDA has required a warning on the use of these types of antidepressants by the increased risk of suicidal thoughts. The vulnerable age that the FDA tells us is 18 to 24. Well, 41% of those deployed in Iraq and Afghanistan fall within that age group, which should have all of us concerned. I want to say I think the Department of Defense has made some strides in the right direction. As part of the National Defense Authorization Act, I offered an amendment that requested information to be made available to our congressional committees on the numbers taking these drugs over the next 5-year period. It was included in the Senate version. It was not included in the conference version. I did send a letter to Secretary Gates, and I want to compliment Secretary Gates. He supplied the information to my office. I've had a chance to talk to him personally, and I think he understands the seriousness of this matter. There's been significant improvements in the pre-deployment screening for health care issues for our soldiers before they go to combat, and there's been post-deployment health care assessment and treatment. I acknowledge that. But I still think we need the Department of Defense Health in trying to understand what is happening as far as the use of these prescribed drugs. We've got a lot of dots, but we haven't connected the dots. And I really do ask this committee, and I'll be asking my colleagues in the Senate, to help in trying to understand what is happening here. Why has there been such a large increase in the use of antidepressants? I think we need to have the answers to the questions. We need to know whether there is proper medical supervision for those who are taking prescribed antidepressants. We need to know what the policy is in those soldiers that are in combat. If they start on antidepressants, what is the policy of the military during those first 6 weeks? Are they to be sent into combat itself, which again, there is a particular vulnerability during that 6-week period. I'm not aware if there is a policy, and I think this committee needs to know, and the United States Senate needs to know. I think we need to have a better understanding on the relationship between the use of antidepressants and suicide within the military. I would urge us to make the resources available for a scientific study with peer review so that we can try to connect the dots. I think we need to know whether there are other treatment options rather than the use of prescribed medicines. And I certainly would urge us to request relevant data be made available to Congress on the use of antidepressants so that we can be part of the oversight responsibilities that we have as members of the United States Senate. And I look forward to working with the committee. I look forward to working with my two colleagues. And I think this is an important issue, and I thank you for giving it its attention.